Good morning everyone, myself Zabur Ahmed Syed. Today we are going to see the topic layered architecture of client server system. So first of all, these are the content of this presentation. First we are going to see the introduction, then basics of client server architecture, then what is layered architecture, what are the typical layers in the layered architecture, then we will compare the thick and thin client, then some examples. For that we are going to explore online shopping system. Then we have advantages and limitations of layered architecture. Then finally we will conclude the presentation. So beginning with the introduction, let's start. So what is software architecture? As the definition says, software architecture is a high level blueprint of the software system. It defines how the software is organized into components, how those components interact, how the principles guide its design and evolution. So basically, what a software architecture is, it is a guidelines, or we can say a blueprint which the software developer should follow while designing software. There are many software architectures. For instance, we can take MVC, in which the entire software is divided into three components: model, view, and controller. Similarly, we also have layered architecture. Let's explore what is the layered architecture. So in layered architecture, the entire software is broken down into multiple layers. For instance, presentation layer, business logic, database access. Separation. Why is layered architecture important, or why should we go for layered architecture? First of all, separation of concern. Each layer has its own responsibility. Maintainability, easy to update individual layer. Scalability, layer can be scaled independently. So as these points are they specify, by layered architecture we can break the entire software into multiple components, so as we can assign a different team for each layer, which will make the maintenance, development, and scaling fast, easy, and convenient for everyone. Then what are some basics of client server architecture? So what happens in client server architecture is, we have the client which requests server, then we have the server which process the request and run some logic, and we have the database which stores the data. So when we consider client server architecture, we can see there are three layers. First, the client will send its request to the server. It may be a login request or some data request. Then server, while processing the request, if the server requires some data regarding the user or any other data, it will again request the database for that data. Database will retrieve the data and send it back to server. Server will process some logic and some operations on that data, and finally it will return HTML, CSS, and JavaScript bundles to the client, and the client will display it on the web browser. Then what more about So in layered architecture, as we see, system is divided into logical layer, each with specific role. Layers interact only with adjacent layer. So as you can see, on the right side we have the diagram where we have the first presentation layer, then we have business logic, then database access layer, and then we have the database. So as you can see, each layer can interact only with the adjacent layer. So the presentation layer, or we can say the client layer, will only access with the business logic layer, which would be the backend or the server layer. So the client will send a request to backend. The backend will not tell the client what is happening behind the scene. It will just process the data and provide the result to the client. And behind the scene, the backend would be accessing the middleware, which between the backend and the database, which will be handling all the complexities between connecting database. Then it can also happen that we may using more than two or three database. So this all abstraction would be handled by database access layer, and database access layer would be responsible for retrieving data from backend and providing it to the retrieving data from the database and providing it to backend. Then we know that each layer interact only with the adjacent layer. Then what are the benefits of using layered architecture? Each layer can be developed independently, easy to change a layer without affecting another. So if we want to change some business logic, we don't need to update the presentation layer or database access layer. That's makes it more convenient and user friendly. Then now let's see what are the typical layers in layered architecture. So first of all, we have the presentation layer, then we have business logic layer, data access layer, and the database layer. So responsibility of each layer is the presentation layer is the responsible for handling the client. It is responsible for all the GUI displays, user interactions. Business logic layer is responsible for all the processing for a user login. Then we have multiple operations like uh, retrieving the past history of the user and all that. That is all that is the responsibility of the business logic layer. Then we have a data access layer. Data access layer is the middleware between the business logic layer and the database layer. As I mentioned, we can have multiple database, and we can have multiple types of database, SQL, NoSQL. That all complexities are handled by data access layer. And finally, the database layer, it stores the data. Next, let's see the difference between thick and thin client. So, as you know, when we have a client server architecture, client will also perform some computation, and server will also perform some computation. But if more of the computation is performed on client, we can call it as a thick client. If less computation is performed on the client and more computation is performed on server, it is called as thin client. Then let's see an example of online shopping system. So we can take an example of any online shopping system, just like Amazon or Flipkart. User clicks buy now button, which is on the presentation layer. Then the server applies business logic. This comes under the business logic layer. Then we go towards the database to query about the product and the user to process the database. Suppose you click on a product and you click on buy now, then the database will first retrieve all the information about the product as well as the user. Then it will create a new order which will be updated into database, and then confirmation will be shown back to the user on the presentation layer. Then let's see some advantages of this architecture. First is clear separation of concern. As all the layers are broken down separately, the it is easy to understand. It is easy to maintain. As we have all layers built separately, if we feel that backend is requiring more computation, we can scale it easily as it's built separately. Then we have easy to maintenance. As I mentioned, the separation is it has a clear separation of concern. Then it's easy to understand, which makes it makes its maintenance easier. Flexibility, as each layer is broken down, we can use different type of programming languages or different types of libraries and frameworks for each layer. Then let's see some limitations. So performance overhead, due to breaking down of each layer, there will be a performance overhead because each layer need to communicate between each other, which will cause which will cost a time, then more complex. It may it may feel more complex, but after all, the complexity comes with a ease of maintenance and understanding. Can be rigid and fast changing requirement. So as we know, the requirements in the current era are changing very rapidly, so it can be difficult to cope up with the fast changing requirement in such a distributed architecture, not always ideal for real-time systems. So in many systems, where we have the uh, legacy code, we can't just go over and just start breaking down everything into layered architecture, just because uh, the code is working from so long, and it is uh, and if we try to break it down into multiple layers, there's a high chances that it will break the entire software. Then let's conclude our presentation. So first, we understood what is layered architecture. In that, we take our software and divide it into multiple layers, like presentation layer, business logic layer, database access layer, and database layer. Then we discussed what is thick and thin client, depending on how much competition is done on the client and how much competition is done on server. We classify a client into thick client or thin client. Then still have we have many like modern enhancements, like microservices, cloud architecture. Then we have APIs, which are being used in the industry at the current time. So uh, so finally we have reached to the end of the video. Thank you for watching.